Let's get started. So, welcome back, everyone, to our bi-weekly AMA. Today we have three people on. You know me. I'm the Gwei in Discord, but my name is Wei. We have Jordan on the line. Hey, Jordan, how are you?
Hello, hi everybody. Thank you for having me again. I'm excited for another AMA. It's gonna be spicy again. You already know. It's gonna be good.
Very spicy. And here we have today we have Brandon joining us, or the Guppy. Brandon has been working 24/7 for the last little while, so people haven't had a chance to see him, but today we're lucky to have him. Got him for an hour to come and talk to us about what he's been working on. So it's great to
Yeah,
see you,
I'm
Brandon.
pumped. I'm pumped, guys.
All right. Okay. So on the agenda today is kind of three different blocks or sections. So number one, I want to talk a little bit about the timeline in terms of what you can expect, what's happening for the next little while. Really, we're kind of entering what I would call kind of a soft launch phase. We're not officially going into the promotion cycle just yet. But over the next little while, we have things lined up that we're going to become a little bit more publicly visible. And some of you may have already picked up on the fact that we're becoming a bit more active on socials, etc. So it's all done with the intent of a gradual ramp up over time, leading into the official promotional cycle, which will be kicked off by the launch of our new website. So I'll go more into the details there. Then one of the reasons that we have Brandon on with us today is to give us a quick update in terms of what the project is. But we also thought it would be really cool to share with you some of the things that we built along the way that has really allowed us to basically transform the entire game relative to what some of you may have experienced and played around with in terms of our original 2D type of health bar-based fighting game. There were a lot of engineering hurdles to overcome. Not only is it difficult to develop a game, we all know how difficult that is. And then we have this AI component that we have to integrate, and a lot of it is just kind of uncharted territory. So I think we felt that over time we want to share some of that experiences with you as a community, and just to give you kind of a peek behind the scenes in terms of what the amount of work and the type of things that we do behind the scenes to try to bring you one of the most compelling kind of game experiences that you experience today. So I'm really looking forward to that. I know Brandon has showed me in different times during the development cycle. So we hope you enjoyed that. And towards the end, we'll have kind of a general question Q&A block. So any question goes, whatever's on top of mind for you guys, feel free to ask away. You can either leave the question in the YouTube chat box, or if you're in our Discord, go to the AMA event questions channel and leave your questions there. We can see both sides. So yeah, ask away whenever something is piquing your interest, and Jordan will be prompting us as the questions come in. Okay, so that's the agenda. Let's get started in terms of the overall kind of the call it the marketing plan or the promotion kind of timeline. So as I mentioned, we did a brief kind of little hashtag campaign over the summer called Wake Me Up in September. And really that was to guide people in terms of when we anticipated to basically come back out and becoming more visible as a project, given that we've been in effectively dark mode for I think it's like almost about 6 months now. So there is still things to be done. Like the game, I think the big components of the game, they're all pretty much built, but there's a lot of details that we're still working towards, and also a lot of the kind of the interactions between the different pieces. And with any kind of development and engineering effort, there's always challenges and problems that you have to overcome. Ideas are very easy to conceive, and I'm guilty of that because I'm usually the idea guy, and then Brandon's like, go off to your corner and just sit there for a bit because I need some time to actually solve all the problems here. So I think, obviously we appreciate everyone in terms of, being patient with us as we go through this development cycle, but we're doing everything in our power to try to get the game into a state where we can now start to share it with you guys as quickly as possible. Having said that, I think starting in September, we're entering what I call a kind of a soft launch phase. So as I alluded to in my preamble, what that means is that we're going to be a bit more active, bit more visible. We're going to be starting to engage on socials a little bit more, just to raise kind of the narrative and the profile in the public sphere, but doing so in a very slow, methodical way. It's not, we're not looking to kind of, start, hitting the gas right off the bat, because we still need a little bit of that time, like I said, to get the game into the right spot, such that when we do decide to push go and release the new website, we're quickly following that up with the fact that we're going to start to onboard people into experiencing the game through beta tests, right? That's the idea. We want to make sure that people can engage with the game as soon as we basically come out and really start driving the storytelling in the public sphere. We don't want to waste that potential energy that we can build, which is why we're choosing to be very methodical and slow in terms of how we build up that awareness. But you can expect that you can expect us to become a bit more active and visible. So what that would entail is, throughout the month of September, we're currently having some conversations with some partners that we've had discussions with for quite a while to start appear on their kind of like spaces, having kind of like co-hosted spaces, talks about our project, and or just appearing in other kind of project spaces, acquiring some organic users that way. I'm personally becoming more and more active in terms of my activity on Twitter. I'm going to be creating a lot more kind of content, just imparting my observations on what's going on out there in terms of the NFT space, the gaming space, and adding to the conversation where I feel like I'm bringing value to the table. And then over time, the format will start to pivot and feature little pockets of like case studies to illustrate and highlight things that we're doing on the AI Arena side that will look different. So that content pipeline is coming. And then one of the initial strategies is like becoming more visible by joining on a lot of these like Twitter Spaces conversations. So I think you can expect to see more momentum on that in the months of September, and I would say even early October. And then hopefully, as we get more and more clarity in terms of how confident we are with the game, in terms of like being able to roll it out for our public beta test, once we get to that level of conviction, that's more or less the time that we're going to press go on like really pushing on the marketing side. And that's probably when we will kind of drop the website. I don't want to commit to a firm date because I can't predict how long some of these things are going to take. As we all know, development is unpredictable, right? Like sometimes you don't foresee all the little details that you had to overcome in terms of getting that more refined product down the line. But I think we're talking about things in the months, like couple of months, right? Instead of like big blocks where we're talking about quarters. So we're getting close, but we still need some time to kind of clean things up along the way. But bringing it all back, we are going to be more active. I do anticipate that the word is going to slowly get out because we have such a compelling product. We are having kind of behind the scene conversations with partners, investors, etc. Every single conversation that we have, people are super excited. And I think, quite frankly, we have probably one of the most unique and exciting products to come out. I say that because there's just nothing like this. And I think people who have been with our community since day one, they can attest to the experience of playing the game, even in that rudimentary version, was probably not like anything they've ever tried out. So just imagine what you felt there, and now is basically like 10x or 100x, to be honest. So that's kind of where we are. I'm happy to kind of take any questions and guidance on that, but we're making good progress, and we're going to be coming out soon with like the full marketing push. And by that time, the expectation is that people in our community can expect to have the ability to qualify for kind of like beta test slots, throughout that kind of marketing phase. So, Jordan, any questions coming in?
Not yet. You're
Okay.
good to go still. You're good.
Okay, so definitely, yeah, leave your questions in the, like I said, leave your questions in the AMA event questions channel if you have any, and or on YouTube. Okay, so in addition to that, I think we're also starting to really ensure that we have the backend infrastructure to support a lot of the organizational and kind of coordination changes that we're implementing to the Discord. So when we release the documentation, there's a community resources section. Make sure you go in there and kind of like read through the articles. It details how the different rank systems work in terms of your roles within our Discord and our community, what is required to kind of qualify for those levels. If people are interested in me kind of providing another session, I'm happy to do that in an upcoming AMA. I think we did discuss that in detail in a couple of AMAs ago. Maybe it was 2 or 3 episodes ago. So if you go back into the YouTube catalog, you should be able to pull up the episode where we did discuss kind of the structure of the community going forward. In the meantime, I think either later this week or sometime next week, we will be announcing the initial list of people that we have approved to participate in the main feature tournament later on. So there were a lot of applications that came in from people that wanted to participate in the tournament. We selected the initial 4 captains, those being DQ, Jello, I think Sangvin, and I'm forgetting the 4th person. Someone can prompt me on that. I'm blanking. Sorry, I'm forgetting the 4th person right now. But and then there's I think behind that we're adding 16 people to the and UK, of course, yeah, and UK. Behind that we're adding 16 other people that will be kind of joining the 4 captains in the competition, and then there will be other opportunities later on for people to basically qualify as well. So we will reveal the process of qualification, ongoing qualification, and the details of how the tournament will work as we get closer and closer to that date. So Malcolm, or the MC, is busy working on a lot of the backend infrastructure to support us keeping all of this information as we go live in terms of promotion. So kudos to him for doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and we're trying to automate a lot of these processes as much as possible so that people can start pulling up this information in Discord through kind of prompt commands, etc., and making that whole process very easy and efficient. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking now because I think it's more exciting to turn it over to Brandon and have him walk us through some of the things that he's building. So if there are no questions, I'm going to turn the floor over to Brandon to have him take it away.
Awesome. Let me share my screen with you guys. Yeah, I'm going to be like looking in this direction, so just don't mind that. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, you're good.
You're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you is basically this component that we made to visualize each of the animations, and we can see it frame by frame. And this is really useful, especially as we're developing a fighting game. Frame data is extremely important. And so it's very important to see what's happening frame by frame, and we can break it down to see if there is too much of a startup, so there's too much animation in the startup, how long are we active, so being able to hit someone, and how long is the end leg. And so we use this to analyze every single move. This is my character. So this is a 3D model of my character. And here, for example, we're in the idle animation. And I can click here to press play, and it'll run through the animation. Or I can just go to a specific frame and see what it looks like in that frame. Now, the idle animation, it's pretty much the same. It's very similar positions for the whole thing. So I'll show you guys sort of another one, which is the punch. So here's the punch, for example, and we can just go on a specific frame and see where everything is. So for example, this one, we start at frame 0, it's winding up, and then it takes 3 frames for it to start connecting. It's active for a few more frames, and then it starts retreating for the next sort of like 8 frames or so. And so we use this to analyze each of the different moves that the fighter can take. I can show you sort of another one. Here is the low sweep. So fighter goes and he sweeps the legs of the opponent. I hope it's not glitching too hard on the screen. It's playing smooth for me.
Yeah,
so
it looks fine. Don't worry, it looks fine. I think it's very quick. The sequence is very quick, but it looks fine.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so this is what we use to sort of analyze the different moves. And this is very useful, like I said, to like refine things, but also when we work with sort of our art team, let's say we want to build some effects on top of this. It's very important that they see frame per frame what happens, and then they can time out what part of the effects plays at what part of the action. So that's one component. The other component, which I'm pumped to show you guys, is something that we made for attaching hurt boxes and hit boxes to the fighters. So I'll go into that over here. So for those who are familiar with fighting games, you'll know this concept, but for those who aren't, a hurt box is basically areas on a fighter that if the opponent connects to, it deals damage. And a hitbox is the thing that is trying to connect to the hurt box, right? So for example, let me go into a punch, the punch move, right? So here, if I go through frame by frame, you can see where the hurt boxes are, right? Now, if I also go through the hitboxes, you see that there's no hitbox yet. And then once the hand goes out, then a hitbox gets revealed. And then once it's done punching, then the hitbox disappears. So when a hitbox connects with a hurt box, then there's damage done to the opponent. I'll pause after all this to see if anyone has any questions. By the way, these are not the final hurt boxes that we're going to use. For example, on the legs, on the feet, they're quite big. This is just sort of to test out the game right now. We're going to refine it and have hurt boxes that more closely resemble the anatomy of the fighter. Now, I want to show you guys something super, super cool. So if I go over to crouch, for example, I don't have any hurt boxes attached to the crouch animation. So when it plays, it's just playing the crouch animation without any hurt boxes on it. So let's say we wanted to attach some hurt boxes. Well, the first thing we thought of doing was sort of linking it to the bones in the body. So we picked what we thought were the closest bones in the body, and we tried linking it to there and see if it can accurately sort of map to the body of the fighter. And you see that it doesn't really work too well. And as I kind of go through the frames, you see it kind of like gets a little messed up. It's not on the proper positions. And the reason for that is because of the rotation and position of each of the joints within a body part. Like for example, if you go back to the A pose, when it's just standing still, the hand is perfectly straight, right? But if you look at the crouch, now the wrist is rotated as well as all the fingers and everything, right? So if you just map it, for example, to the wrist, then it's not going to be able to accurately be on top of the specific body part, which is the hands in this case, right? So that presented a problem for us, and we were thinking a lot about it, like how do we solve this? And there was some like weird like heuristics that we can possibly come up with, but it would take like such a long time to figure out something that's like accurate and can represent all the different positions the fighter can be in. So because we have a background in machine learning, we thought, okay, let's just apply some machine learning to this. So what we did is we labeled a few animations. So we attached hurt boxes to a few different animations, and then we extracted all that data, brought it into Python, and we trained some deep neural networks to learn how to map the hurt boxes to the body parts based on the skeleton of the fighter. So we looked at basically the position and rotation of all the bones within the fighter. And this is what it looks like. So I'll just remove the linking of bones over here. Here are the models. So there's a model per hurt box. I can drag it over here so it uploads. And as soon as I click use ML, what's going to happen is it's going to attach them based on the deep learning models. And now you see, as I go frame by frame, it actually perfectly maps it onto the body of the fighter. And this is really important because we are consistently pumping out new animations. And so imagine having to manually readjust the position of every single hurt box for every single frame, for every single animation. Right now, if we get a new animation, just use the machine learning models, click use ML, save animation, and then what happens is it's going to run through everything frame by frame, save everything into our backend so that we can use it in our game seamlessly. I'll pause for now, but this was like a huge scalability like solution for us, and it's helping us pump out new animations, or at least incorporating new animations a lot quicker. I'll pause for a second. I don't know if there's any questions or not, but we were super pumped about this when we created it.
There's a lot of things I've learned about hitboxes now. I didn't know how hitboxes worked until like what you just explained right now. But
Cool.
Somebody said it looks like anime Lego.
All right.
Yeah, no, I think first of all, I agree with Jordan. Like, I had no idea that there was like building a fighting game would be so scientific behind the scenes, because it's literally like every little frame, like every single frame matters in terms of obviously the visual feel of the game, one, right? The tactics and the strategies that result from the game, right? Because you know, you're talking about like certain ways that you're adjusting the frame by frame can change how a fighter, how a player actually adjusts their strategy, because it impacts their response time, impacts their you know, reaction time, and all of those things. And then the positioning of the hitboxes and hurt boxes were also really interesting, because I remember you also showing me kind of like these wikis online of people mapping it out for Smash characters, right? And then you can go in and study each, like how Bowser is different than Mario, right? In terms of where you know, like the surface area of how Bowser can get hit relative to another character, and you know, the path of movement of a punch for, you know, Mario is different than Yoshi, and therefore that breeds different types of kind of like strategies and mechanics in terms of how you train these characters or how you play them in the game. So
actually,
now
that you mentioned how to train characters, somebody asked that question. Somebody asked, how long does it take to train the model?
This model or the model in the actual game?
They weren't specific. They just said just the model.
I'm assuming they're talking about this model that you use to do this.
This model, I would say most of the work and most of the time went into data pre-processing, labeling, configuring everything right. There was quite a bit of time that also went into research on how to incorporate rotations properly, 3D rotations. It's not easy. Happy to discuss it afterwards if anyone's interested. But there's a discontinuity whenever you're dealing with rotations that's difficult to solve. But anyway, I diverge. I would say once we have everything set up, all the pre-processing, we figured out how to properly set up the features, get the data. I would say no more than like 10, 20 minutes to train the model. Let's say up to half an hour, because we're training it for different body parts.
And how like, what's the right way of framing this? Like, how accurate do you think this model is now at like pinning these hurtboxes and hitboxes to a asset, irrespective of what kind of animation you do? Like, how much of like cleanup work do you have to do on the back end?
I think it depends how different the animation was to what it has seen. If it is very different, I would say it's like 90% accurate, and then we need to do a little bit of work. So for example, I'll show you. Like, so let's say it predicted like it was like this instead. Then what we would do is we would just go in here, click G, which is our key for moving, and then move it into the correct spot. Once it's in the correct spot, then we would just click save frame. And that's pretty much it. And then it overrides it. But the machine learning in the very different case gets us like 90% of the way there. Now, with that said, that was with us only training on, I believe, 5 or 6 examples. Right now, we have labeled data for like probably like 40 animations, 40 plus animations. I'm sure if we re-aggregate it and retrain the model, I'm pretty certain it'll be like 98% accurate, because we have such a wide array of different types of animations that it should consider the vast majority of cases at this point.
Mm-hmm. Super cool. The other question that I have for you, like, can you talk about, like, here you see that each little dot represents a specific frame, right? Like a specific like sequence in the action for this particular animation. Like, what's the science behind how you think about how many frames should go into an action, how much should be like apportioned to like the wind up portion of the action versus the actual part of the action that's dealing the strike, and then the recovery time where the action resets to the starting point so that it can loop into the next action? Like, what are some of your insights in kind of the development process that's like that you can share with us that may be interesting?
Sure. I think there's a few things that most fighting games will do, which we do as well. So for example, some actions that tend to be quicker in nature, whether that be for startup or recovery frames, they will also deal less power. And in our case, we're making a platform fighter, so it'll also deal less knockback, right? So the opponent won't fly back as much. Now, these are great for comboing, right? So you do a few quick attacks that lead into like a much more powerful attack. So I would say that's one general rule of thumb, is that there is some positive correlation with power and the number of frames in an attack. Another thing that we found, and we also read a great article from the guy who's leading Rivals of Aether. He talked about this idea of like when you're initiating a new attack, you want the first couple frames to be visually distinct from your previous state that you were in. And the reason for that is so that basically that the user feels that the game is being responsive, right? But if, for example, you crossfade from like an idle into like slowly moving back and then quickly punching, it feels like it's not too responsive if it takes like 7 frames to wind up. But if it takes like 1 frame to wind up, then you immediately know when you press a button, you're into that attack. You know what I mean? And it feels very responsive. And so we've definitely taken that approach, that when we're transitioning from one state to a certain attack or even another state, we want the first few frames to feel visually distinct. So the user knows, okay, I'm in this new state now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that probably accounts for when people play different types of fighting games. Sometimes they do kind of just experience these fighting games differently. And when people say, hey, like the mechanics of this fighting game feels like it's kind of crappy, it's all like these type of subtleties that are built into how these fighting games work that makes them ultimately derive that type of impression of, you know, the game that they're actually playing. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Like before we made a lot of these changes, the game felt really clunky, felt slow, wasn't responsive. And then as we kept incorporating more and more of these changes, we're like, oh shit, this is like really fun. This is like, it's like doing what I wanted to do when I wanted to do. It was feeling a lot smoother. So yeah, these what it seems like is small changes make like a massive difference.
For sure.
Somebody wrote in YouTube. They said, "Can we see more animations?"
Ooh, hold on, let me open up the other one. The
Yeah.
animations play a bit better. There, just give it a second. What animation should we show?
Let's start with some of your favorites.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
He's like, all of them are my favorite. I love all of them.
No. We'll show a few. We still got to leave some content to show you guys later. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so maybe we'll show. This one's really cool. So it's a flip kick that we have in the game. So I'll play it. So you have some upward momentum, and then you kick the fighter, your opponent, up.
Wait, Brandon, because of the connection, when it comes across, the animation goes really quickly. Do you mind clicking through some of the frames?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, let me click through the frames. Okay, so this is the flip kick.
Yeah,
oh, that's much better.
Nice. The Matrix.
Yeah. So that's
so cool.
That is that kick. I'll show you guys the flying kick as well. So this is what's known as a dash attack. So if you're running and then you click the attack button, then you're gonna go into this attack state. And then you go, it's basically like a flying kick to try and hit your opponent.
Can you do that like dash roll?
The roll?
Yeah, the roll.
Yeah. So this is our roll. So you can basically bypass your opponent with some invincibility frames when you do this roll.
Animation looks smooth. Somebody wrote that.
Yeah, the roll is like one of my favorite little like at moves in the game. Like it's such an interesting it's such an interesting like action that you can integrate into your strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and also the community probably doesn't know that we have grabs and throws in the game now. So this is from the grab state. This is the throwing up of the fighter. So you can like throw your fighter up, forward, backwards, down. So yeah, and maybe let's show like one more. This is our uppercut while you're in the air. So if you're jumping or you're airbound, so you're either jumping or falling, and then you do up and attack, then it plays this uppercut, this aerial uppercut, which I love the animation for. Yeah, you guys just have to test this out. Like it feels so good to hit someone midair and just hit them off the screen with this uppercut aerial. In our group chat for the team, everyone's been posting like highlights, and that's one of the favorite ones is like to get the opponent up to a high position and then just like hit them off the screen with this attack.
Yeah. Now, I can assure you the highlight is not coming from me. Most of the time it's coming from the dev team because they've been developing and playing the game. So, this is...
They've already become masters at it. They're like really
yeah,
good.
exactly. There's a huge discrepancy between the dev team and when they play the game and everyone else. But, yeah.
I think that's it for now. We have a lot of animations, but I want to save some content for the future. You know, keep people on their toes.
Yeah, somebody wrote, what about trash talk animation?
We don't have that yet. We do not. We're still thinking through the best way to incorporate that. Like you mean like a taunt, right?
Yeah, like a taunt. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. We currently don't have that. You can probably like you can probably make something with some of the animations, like putting them together. One of our devs actually made one with the crouch animation, which was pretty interesting. But no, we don't have any official taunts.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely to come. We were taunting each other yesterday in our group chat. So we have the taunting material, but not the actual like capability yet. So
Yeah.
we can work on that.
Exactly.
No, this is super cool.
Hmm.
Brandon, do you also want to like talk a little bit about the journey that you went on as you were building this game in terms of the insane amount of like research that you did into every single fighting game that's like worthwhile playing today? Like,
Sure.
can you just talk a little bit about your observations and what you learned from that experience? Because I think literally, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, like late at night or over the weekend, Brandon would just send me random YouTube posts that's like 2 hours long of some guy just talking about very intricate mechanics of like fighting games, and I'm like, dude, great. Like, I get it. I'm excited, but like, this is a lot of content. But anyway, like, so yeah, talk to us about like what
Yeah.
have you learned, and what are we kind of lifting and taking in terms of inspiration from all the other great fighting games that are out there today?
Yeah, I mean, but one thing I would say is like, yeah, I like always take that approach with everything. Like, you remember when we were in the financial markets, literally what I would do, I would read every single thing about financial markets. And then when I was like getting really into machine learning, like 6 years ago, I would literally spend like freaking 12 hours a day, like on my weekends, like almost 20 hours just reading like machine learning papers. Like I was like, I need to know like everything about this topic, because I get like super obsessed. So yeah, when I started making a video game, I'm like, okay, I need to learn everything about video game. Like first it was just about general video game development, and then as we shifted to platform fighters, it was like, okay, I need to know everything about platform fighters. Now I have been playing Super Smash Bros for a long time, so I've always kind of been familiar with platform fighters, and I've had a bias towards platform fighters because of that. It's always been my favorite game to play. But yeah, but then and to be honest, I hadn't really explored other platform fighters until I started building this game. And then I started playing like a few others, and I was like, oh shit, like some of these are really cool. Specifically Rivals of Aether. I'm like a giant fan of Rivals of Aether. But yeah, so there was like a selection of like platform fighting games that we thought were worthwhile to try out. And so I forced the entire dev team, the game development team, to play all these games and take notes on everything about the game. So I wanted notes on every single move, frame data for every single move, like literally like starting frames, active frames, and like for every single move in every single game for every single character. And then so there are some resources online where I did some analysis on this. So I pulled all that data into Python, cleaned it up, and started just looking at like trends, like are there like specific things that hold true in all of these games? And there are a few trends that hold true. And then I started testing them out, and I'm like, why do they hold true? And for example, that correlation, for example, between like number of frames in an attack versus like the damage dealt. It's not a perfect correlation, but there is a positive correlation there. Additionally, I noticed that a lot of sort of like just analyzing the moves, I noticed that that whole responsive thing of like getting a move to be visually distinct quickly is apparent in a lot of really good games that are that feel really good to play. So yeah, I would like extract a lot of that stuff out of it. I spent a lot of time thinking about how to balance the game, like probably an unhealthy amount of time thinking about how to unbalance the game. And it's extremely important in our case because we want the machine learning to shine, right? We want how you train the model to be like the focal point of like that's the reason why it won or lost. You know what I mean? with that said, there is still variability within each of the fighters, right? They have different battle attributes, they have different elements, but we're trying to design it in a way that every single NFT is viable, and it's up to you and how you train it to basically determine the fate of how it performs. With that said, if you are more comfortable with a certain type of fighter, so like a quicker, lighter fighter that's able to hit a lot more combos, isn't as heavy, and you get dealt a heavy fighter, you may, even though they have, for example, like the same probability of winning, assuming two really good trainers in those respective character archetypes, if you get dealt a bad one, or one that you're not like comfortable with training, you might have a harder time, even though what we're doing is we're basically building it so that people that are good at training that respective archetype can train it to a point where everything is competitive, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, those are some of the things that I spent time researching, is like how to balance it, how to make it feel good, and yeah, and how to make it fun.
Yeah.
Now there's still a lot more we could incorporate, and that might come a bit later. But for the moment, I think we're building a really, really solid product based on all the research. I don't really want to say what games we did look at and what we didn't like, because I don't want to like put any other games down. But yeah, we looked at maybe like 5-6 different platform fighters that are the big ones, basically.
Yeah. I just want to like add a layer of context on what Brandon just said for potentially new people that are kind of joining our community more recently, so they don't have the entire context of what happened historically and why it's led us to some of the things that Brandon are talking about today. Like the original version of the game, it was a 2D game that was more like Street Fighter, was health bar based, right? Like the objective was to basically deplete the health of your opponent. One of the challenges with that ultimately was the exploration space for your AI was somewhat constrained, right? And that was one of the key motivations for us to move to 1, 3D characters, and 2, platform fighting, because we wanted to expand the search space for strategies for AI so that you can have a lot of different types of strategies that are not just competing on, very, very like kind of narrow meta strategies that people can kind of converge to. And we ran into some of those scenarios. So if you've been with us for a while and you participated in the original betas, one of the frustrations with particularly the second beta was like people started to converge on certain metas, right? And it was like everyone started copying each other, and it didn't make for a really exciting visual like consumption of gameplay, which is one of the areas that we really want to amplify. Is like, not only is it fun to play, it needs to be visually exciting for someone to just watch what these AIs are doing when they're fighting against each other. And that visual interest is many times tethered to when you're watching for different strategies that an AI can implement. So moving to this new kind of game platform, all the stuff that Brandon was doing in terms of the research, all of that was our kind of mission to, 1, deliver a really fun gaming experience first and foremost. Like, you need to be able to play and enjoy the game, right? And that's quite frankly one of the issues with quote unquote AI games out there today, is that there is actually no gameplay. It's more or less you're just watching AI, right? Like it's watching a simulation. So my criticism on AI gaming today, whichever AI game that exists out there, is where's the gameplay? Right. And then we take that, and that was a challenge that we took on for ourselves. And I credit Brandon for doing this, because from day one, Brandon has always said gameplay is number one, and the game has to be fun. Yes, there's a machine learning aspect to it, but you can't have a viable gaming product if there's no fun and excitement embedded in it. So the amount of effort that our dev team led by Brandon has put into making the game fun is been tremendous. I think, like, just me being there in the evolution of where we started to where we are now is incredible. Now, add to that the AI component, right? That is yet another like mind-blowing thing. That dimension of I'm training my AI, and the AI is learning through my actions. So the better that I can play the game, the better off my AI is going to be in terms of its potential to learn something effective. And then there's all of this other strategy that's involved in actually how you train your AI, right? How do you tune the parameters? How do you take the information of this inspector that we have to take the information of, oh, okay, let me see what the AI has learned. Let me understand its current policy, its current kind of decision-making structure. And then take that feedback and iterate and feed that into how I train it again through demonstration. This entire loop is fascinating. It's super fun, right? And there's an incredible amount of depth into how you can basically continue to explore and find better and better and more effective strategies to employ. And then the ultimate thing is you do all of that work, and then you have this like slight fear complex as well as like, I think I did a good job. I don't really know if my AI is really going to perform. And then you put your AI into the battle with other AIs to really test its mettle. And then the first time you realize that, hey, through this process, I was able to improve my AI, and now my AI is kind of kicking ass. That like, it's such a rewarding feeling. Like, I can't tell you how crazy of a dopamine hit that is. And it's just going to give you like one of the most craziest experiences that you've ever had when you play games. And I think ultimately the package of all these things gives us the conviction to say we have one of the most exciting and most differentiated game products out there. Anyway,
I wanted to circle back to something really quick. DQ wrote that during the trash talk animation, the taunt we were talking about, DQ wrote victory move / position for sale as like an idea. So kind of like emotes, you know, like when you see in games, you know, sometimes they put emotes and stuff. And I also got somebody else that wrote the first time I showed my friend AI Arena, he said that games with AI would not be successful, and cited Numerai as an example. Said they had already tried it and it didn't work. And it said, unfortunately, he didn't just hear me that AI Arena would have gameplay.
Yeah. So, Brandon, what are your thoughts?
Does he think Numerai is a game?
I think so, yeah.
Or maybe he doesn't understand Numerai then.
Yeah.
So, or is he just talking about AI competitions in general?
Most likely.
I think AI competitions are fun, but I'm a nerd. So, no, I mean, people will just have to play the game. I'm very biased, and everyone on the team is biased. Everyone thinks the game is fun. It is actually addicting. It's like first, just like moving around with your fighters, super addicting. I'm sure like everyone can attest that we spent like an insane amount of time on the movement to make it feel like super fun. And literally we just like jumping off the walls, going through platforms and stuff. Like, it's very fun. Actually battling is also very fun. And then training is like insanely addicting. Like what Wei was saying. When you're like, like for example, when you do a certain move, like the opponent's off platform, you jump, go towards them, punch them, and hit them off stage. And then you see it doing that in a battle. Like the dopamine hit is absolutely insane. Because it's almost like your child, right? Like you taught this child how to play this game. And it was very fun in the process, by the way, of teaching the child, because you're just playing a game. And then you see it learning what you do. we're biased. We think it's very fun, but ultimately you're gonna have to test it out yourself. I'm willing to bet you would think it's fun as well, and so would your friend.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you just have to test it out.
I would say, just to add to that comment that Kaiji made.
Kaiji, yeah, Kaiji.
Yeah.
Mhm.
First of all, Numerai is not a game, right? Like, to me, like, Numerai is a competition, is a machine learning based competition. I think a lot of people that participate in Numerai would say that the competition is very fun because they derive enjoyment in a different way. So Numerai I would not classify as a game. Now, I think there is a valid observation to say I think the question is, how do you translate AI from a competitive format into a gaming format? That's the valid question to ask. And I think if they are asking that question, they should be asking that question of every single game out there that purport that they are an AI game. They should be asking that, right? Because, like I said, there's a lot of projects out there, and there's going to be even more going forward that's going to come out and say, hey, we're an AI game. Now, most projects, it's just fortuitous marketing, right? Like they're going to slap it out there, and really what they do is they probably have a few NPCs that are empowered by like some type of AI model, and they say, now we're AI gaming. Whatever. Do with that what you want, right? And then there are going to be games that says, no, AI is a core component of the game, right? So now they're going to differentiate based on the experience that it brings. This is the part where this is the exact question that you should be asked. Okay, how is AI incorporated in the game? Is it just because it's AI, therefore it should be more fun? The answer is no, right? And if you haven't thought through that, it's not going to be making for a compelling gameplay experience. More or less, what I've seen is I'm basically watching simulations happen. And I have some ability to tweak a couple of parameters that changes how the asset performs in the next iteration of simulation. That's it. Is that fun? I don't know. Some people may find that fun. But is there really true a gameplay loop in there? I don't know. Right. And I'm not here to I'm not saying that to disparage other projects, but I'm just contrasting to say, like Brandon mentioned, we spent an unhealthy amount of time obsessing over what is the right loop to actually implement into an AI game that makes it fun, right? And that's where we can talk all we want, but this is also why we're not going to launch the promotion campaign and the marketing campaign until such time that the game is ready for that beta, so that when we're telling you the story and when we're blasting it to the entire world about what we're building, people can come in and start testing it for themselves, because the proof is in the pudding, right? Like, you're gonna have to experience for yourself and determine if it's fun, if it's addicting, which we think is all those things. But that's up for you to decide. What we promise is we have enough. I think it's at the very least different than anything else you've tried. I'm pretty confident in that statement. I won't say like it's better or worse. That's completely subjective depending on the person. But you can guarantee is one of the most interesting kind of gaming experiences that you've ever had. So I'll leave it at that.
I'll just add one quick thing. So I think there's a difference when you build something versus when you observe something, if you know what I mean. So like Wei was describing these other AI games where you press a button and it just auto trains, right? And you're not really involved in the core loop. You don't get the satisfaction that you do when you build something, right? And even just like stripping away the actual gameplay, like when I used to do research into applying reinforcement learning to games, I was building these models. And even though I didn't have the cool interface that AI Arena has for the users, I got like a tremendous amount of pleasure once I saw the thing that I built performing. Versus if I was just taking some model off the internet that I didn't develop, I could care less, right? Like, okay, cool. Like I'd be like, okay, that's pretty cool, right? But I don't get the same hit that the suspense of you building this thing and finally see it perform, and you're like, that's what I'm talking about. It did what I wanted it to do.
Exactly.
I'll just leave it at that.
I was gonna say one more
Exactly.
thing also. Somebody, Crypta in Discord wrote, everyone playing, I don't know if I'm saying this right, Monaco was having so
Zero.
much fun, and it got really competitive also.
Yeah. 0x Monaco.
Yeah.
And you know it's funny there because like, okay, we when we came out with this concept and we were originally pitching VCs, there were a few conversations. Like most of the time, like people were really excited. There was a couple of conversations where people were like, we had one person in particular that basically said, heard the entire pitch and just said, yeah, I don't think it's going to be fun. And it kind of like, it hit us not because it was like criticism. It was just like, how does someone know that for a fact that they feel so convinced to make that comment without understanding how the entire loop works, right?
Mhm.
Like, I mean, I give him credit for having the audacity to say it out loud, but I think subsequently, 12 months later, I think even without us having our game really out there yet, with things like Dark Forest and with things like 0x Monaco, you're starting to see the proof point of this type of game being actually really fun, and I would argue in many ways like more addictive than some of the traditional gaming primitives that are out there. And we've always had this kind of like, it's not even a debate, but we converge on this thought internally that the fact that when you release your AI into the arena and battle against the AI, the fact that you don't have control in that moment makes it more exciting. It is so, again, we always say the dopamine hits different because you don't have control. There's an element of surprise, there's an element of chance, and there's an element of like, whoa, I didn't even know my AI could actually figure out how to do that. It was like, how the heck did it learn how to, like that, those moments, man, oh man, like that's where the kind of like the addictive loop starts to reinforce itself. And I think you start to see, and that's exactly part of, I believe, part of the reason why 0x Monaco was really well received by the dev community is it had that element of like, you didn't have control. Once you developed the model and you released it and it has to compete against other models, you don't have control in terms of whether it's going to do well or not. And when it does really well, you're like, man, that was really cool. So I think we're definitely kind of injecting that type of experience, except it feels on steroids because there's another kind of engagement loop up front on training. Visually is way beyond something like 0x Monaco. So all of that together, I think, is again a super compelling product that we're bringing to market.
I have a question really quick from Gambit in Discord. Gambit wrote, are you planning on whitelisting based on specific NFT collections?
I see.
That's a good question.
The short answer is no. The whitelisting or mint listing approach is not going to be because you are a member that holds some other NFT asset necessarily. Now, having said that, as I mentioned before, we have a kind of group of partners that we are working with. So there are certain mechanisms that we may build into specific promotion campaigns that perhaps do advantage those communities slightly. But it's not just because you're part of that community, you're going to get our NFT. Like we don't believe that is the right way of distributing our initial supply. As we've always said, one of the core tenets for our project is meritocracy, right? And where possible, we want to ensure that there's alignment between people who did things to deserve an allocation of the NFTs relative to just like a casual person who was kind of there. And, we want to make sure that we're separating that and we're rewarding people that are really deserving of that. Now, the best way to do that, which is again, comes back to why we are taking our time before we press the marketing button, the best way to do that is actually use the game as a vehicle to determine who perhaps should be the right person to receive an NFT. So if you've been with us for a while, you know, right? Like the people that were playtesters that got accepted into the first 2 betas, some of them already have NFTs, right? Because they earned into it. We're still going to take that kind of prototype and that template going forward. And all of that is also why we are very, very kind of meticulous in terms of timelines and how we're staging things. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, I think we're running out a little bit over and running out of time. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. We're going to wrap it up here. As always, we'll come back in 2 weeks. So we'll constantly do these updates every 2 weeks. As I mentioned, we're going to be slowly becoming more and more visible, active on social. Look out for us in terms of some of these like announcements around us attending spaces, etc. That whole cycle will probably start later on in September, and we'll keep you posted on when kind of the game is in that right state where we feel comfortable in kind of launching the marketing phase. We're close, but we can't make any guarantees. But yeah, we're definitely towards the end as opposed to the beginning. And so thank you so much for keeping with us, staying with us, being like very strong supporters of us from day one. We really appreciate all of you guys. Any other questions, feel free to engage with us in Discord, ask away. We're happy to answer anything that's top of mind. And yeah, we'll see all of you very soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Bye,
Jordan.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Brandon.
Bye.
Talk to you soon.